Welcome to Without Fear, Life, Death, and Everything in Between, a podcast for anyone ready to embrace life's ultimate truth. It ends. I'm Death Doula Alexis Hughes, here to break down barriers around mortality through heartfelt conversations, personal insights, and practical tools for facing the end with courage and intention. Whether you're curious about death, navigating grief, or seeking ways to live more fully, this is your safe space to explore life's most transformative topics. Together, we'll turn fear into understanding and silence into connection.
Welcome back, crew. You did see that title is correct. We are coming back to something we have discussed before. Death is no thief. We're returning to one of the hardest, more personal conversations I've had on this podcast, hence the kind of like pulled down aesthetic today. Death is not a thief, and we're going to get into why I truly believe that today. It's not death that takes the people that we love. It's what gets to them first. Well, Alexis, duh. No one just dies. There's always something that gets to them first. And we think mainly heart failure, COPD, cancer, all that kind of good stuff. But we don't ever think about addiction, misdiagnosis, the mental illness that goes unseen and untreated, silence, systems that fail. We've talked about how death is not the villain we make it out to be. That death isn't a thief. It doesn't sneak in like a shadow and steal people from you without warning. What really steals our loved ones are the forces that isolate, distort, and break them before death ever arrives. And this episode is going to be about the real thieves and the ones that take hold long before death ever even shows up. We, as people, like to tell stories that make sense. We like things that we can understand. We like to put things in boxes. We like black and white. Heroes, villains, life, death, winners, losers. And death has always been an easy villain to point to, something to be scared of, something to blame. We say they lost their battle or death took them too soon. But here's what I've learned. Death doesn't steal anybody. It simply arrives when the body can't keep fighting what's already killing it. And here's what I've come to further believe is that it's not a thief. Death is a threshold. It's a final companion. It's not who or what that kills us. Death is who walks us home through that final transition door. So if death's not the thief, then what is? In my mother's case, what was killing her wasn't death. It was the slow suffocation of being misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and unheard by the people that were supposed to take care of her. For those of you that don't know, let me tell you about my mom. She was beautiful, sharp, funny, lights up a room, lit up people's lives, and she was in pain most of her adult life. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was a kid. As far back as I remember was, conversations about medication and therapy and doctor's appointments and things like that. She struggled with depression, erratic energy, confusion, disorganized thoughts. She was prescribed medications for mood stabilization, and they never worked. Not really. The highs weren't productive. The lows were devastating. Eventually, she started to self-medicate. Because when nothing helps, you reach for whatever might dull the edges. Anything is better than your reality. I watched her cycle through manic highs that weren't joyful, just chaotic. Then came the crashes, terrifying, hollow, unreachable. From the perfect bestie mom to myself as a teenager and a young adult to a demon There are looks on her face when she was in the middle of the lows that looked like something out of a horror movie and that I will never forget. And so she did what so many people in pain do. She tried to fix it herself. She mixed medication with alcohol. She adjusted her own dosages. She tried herbal supplements, essential oils, anything. She was so smart that she could go to the doctor, the physician, the psychiatrist, and tell them the symptoms so that they would adjust her dosages and give her the medications that she wanted to try to fix it herself because she was so unheard that she did all the research herself to learn about the drugs and how they worked to try to manifest the way her diagnosis would play out so that she could experiment on herself to fix the problems. She just wanted peace. Here's what I discovered years later. My mom wasn't bipolar. Let that sit there for a second. She was schizophrenic. The wrong diagnosis meant the wrong medication, and the wrong medication made everything worse. For those of you that are experiencing the mental health field, you know that schizophrenia, bipolar disorders are cluster disorders that have a lot of the same comorbidity and same presenting symptoms. They are medicated with the same drug families, but obviously in different combinations and different amounts. So the drugs kind of worked, but not properly. And when I figured it out, when I brought it up, no one wanted to hear it. I was an undergrad psych student at the time, not her doctors, not the hospital after her first suicide attempt, not the people who were supposed to help her. I was told, you're not a professional. You're just her daughter. You're too close to see it clearly. Oh, isn't that cute? The lay psych student thinks that they're smarter than me with my cajillion years of experience and 10,000 medical gold stars and all like that. But my dad and I were the ones watching her unravel. And when I would explain to them the symptoms that she was telling me she had, that she didn't report to them because I told them she's afraid of the stigma of a diagnosis. We have a family history of schizophrenia because I had discovered by that point that my grandmother, my mother's mother, was schizophrenic. It is passed down. And she was exhibiting the symptoms. Nobody would listen. And then when she died by suicide, I remember thinking, death didn't steal her. Neglect did. Stigma did. The system that didn't listen stole her from me. And when you zoom out from my personal story, you start to see a pattern. According to the CDC, suicide rates in the United States have climbed nearly 37% since 2000. In 2022 alone, we lost over 44,000 people to suicide, one of the highest numbers ever recorded. Let's break that down. That's like a person every 11 minutes. And for every person who dies by suicide, there are roughly 25 attempts. Over 12 million Americans seriously consider suicide every year. My mom had 2 previous attempts, and those are only the ones that we know about. And the last one, before she succeeded, got her hospitalized in the grippy sock place. And I knew then, after what I know now, that she made up her mind that she would not be going back to the grippy place again, that the next time she tried, she meant it. Now, on top of all that, considering mental illness, layer in addiction. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, nearly 1 in 4 people who die by suicide also struggle with some sort of substance abuse disorder. The relationship between the two is so strong that the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, refers to addiction and mental illness as mutual accelerants. Each one fuels and accelerates the other. When it comes to diagnosis, women are more likely to be misdiagnosed with depression or bipolar disorder when they're actually living with a case of schizophrenia. We're not losing people because death is cruel. We're losing them because the system that's supposed to protect them refuses to see it clearly. One study found that given identical case descriptions, psychiatrists were significantly more likely to diagnose schizophrenia if the patient was described as male than if described as female, suggesting a significant gender bias in diagnostic practice. And another study of patients with severe psychiatric disorders found that misdiagnosis was common, 39.16%, and patients with depressive disorders were often more likely to be misdiagnosed as having schizophrenia and vice versa. When we look at addiction and mental illness as predators, addiction doesn't show up like a monster under the bed. It shows up like a friend that says, I can help. I can make it stop. I can make you feel better. Wouldn't you like a break? Mental illness does the same. It convinces you that you're too much, you're too broken, you're too complicated, you're too something. It isolates you and it makes you unreachable. And once those two forces combine, untreated mental illness and self-medication, it's a perfect storm. Because mental illness and addiction have one shared strategy. They want to get you alone. They want to cut you off from your community. They whisper that no one will understand, that you're a burden, that you're beyond help, that you're a bother, that no one cares, that everybody's going to be glad when you're gone. And once you're convinced of that, they don't need you to kill you themselves. You'll do it for them. They want to isolate you and get you alone so that they can kill you. Let's be honest. We live in a world where you can get same-day delivery for anything, except a therapist. The average wait time to see a psychiatrist in the US right now is over 8 weeks. For low-income patients or people without insurance, it's longer. And for people with complex or stigmatized conditions like schizophrenia, the wait can stretch for months or even years. Less than 1 in 3 Americans, 1/3, struggle with mental illness, receive adequate treatment. And among those who do, only half of those report that it helped. Why? Because most treatment isn't designed to listen. It's designed to manage. My mom didn't need management. She needed someone to look her in the eyes and say, I believe you. You're not crazy, you're unwell, and I'm here to help you. But she never got that. So what now? We talk. We build systems of care that are proactive, not just reactive. We train ourselves to see the warning signs of distress, not just the final acts of crisis. We stop romanticizing the strong silent type and we start asking the deeper questions. We understand that someone doesn't need to hit rock bottom before they deserve help. When someone dies by suicide or overdose, by illness tied to a lifetime of silent pain, we don't blame death. We ask what failed them. So if this episode resonates with you, if you've lost someone to mental illness, addiction, or suicide, or you're walking through your own darkness, I want you to know something. You don't have to face it alone. At Without Fear, my life coaching work centers on grief, transition, and meaning making. Together, we rebuild the world after loss, not through toxic positivity, but through truth and intention. Because healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering with grace. So we're going to take a short break and be right back to get into the numbers. Ooh, welcome back. It's getting heavy in here. But that's okay, because this needs to be talked about, right? People think, well, this hurts and I don't want to deal with it. But let me tell you, as someone that hurts every single day because someone didn't talk about it, if you hurt yourself, it's going to hurt everybody you know. So let's hurt up front. Because the thing that always resonates with me is there's a quote, where my pain ends, yours begins. And that is one of the most dynamic sayings that applies to suicide that I think I've ever heard. Because when people tell me, I'm so sorry you lost your mom, I always have to stop myself. I didn't lose her. She didn't wander off. I didn't just like not air tag her and lose her in a parking lot. Like, And that's part of what no one talks about, right? She wasn't lost. The grief that follows a suicide or overdose isn't just sadness, it's confusion, anger, guilt, shame. We talked about this up front. And like I said, I was an undergrad psych student at the time. So I was like, yes, empowerment. And like, even as a death doula now, I advocate for medical aid in dying, which, if you don't know what that is, take a Google at it. It is self administered ending of life with a terminal illness. And we had so many conversations. It was, Alex, this is getting really bad. And there's going to come a time where I don't want to do this anymore. This is going to become more than I can handle. And no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your dad's fault. There's nothing you can do to save me. This is my decision. So know that. And, I'm like, yes, queen about it, right? And then it happened. And I was not, not okay with it. You replay every conversation, every moment, every red flag you ignored or couldn't stop or dismissed. But the truth is, it was never mine to stop. The night that it happened, my dad called me. He was upset. And she had an episode and threatened him violence and driven him from the house. And he went and he stayed at a hotel room and he's like, I'm just going to give your mom time to come down, calm down. Do you think you could call her, maybe go up there? And I said, well, Dad, if she's in a state of violence, I don't think that's going to fix anything. And it might put me in danger. You did the right thing by leaving. And I knew when I ended that phone call that it was over. I knew. Then my next phone call was to my mom and she didn't pick up. And I was in flip phone era. I flipped my phone shut and said, okay. And I said a few words to the wind and I went to bed, fully anticipating the call that I got the next morning that she was no longer with us. And I think about it that if I could see what was happening and still couldn't get anyone to listen and couldn't get any help, how many other families are screaming into the void? Because behind every statistic is a story, a face, a family. According to the World Health Organization, over 700,000 people die by suicide globally every year. That's a human being every 40 seconds. And every one of them, there's a web of grief that stretches across generations, parents, children, partners, friends. Myself and everyone that loved my mother have a hole in our heart for the rest of our life. It has been over 10 years now. And as you saw a few minutes ago, I still choke up about it. There's nothing that's going to fix it. Where her pain ended, ours began. We need to start saying their names and asking why. Not to assign blame, but to build understanding. Because silence is the shame in which soil grows. And shame is how the thief hides. When I say death is no thief, I don't mean death is welcome. I mean, death is honest and doesn't lie to you. Addiction lies. Mental illness distorts. Misdiagnosis misleads. But death is the end of distortion. It's the truth. It's the closing chapter. And if we get to it with grace, if we can help people live long enough and well enough, then we can write a different kind of ending. And for my mom, that didn't happen. But maybe by telling her story, someone else can get a different one. When I think about my mom now, I don't picture the end. I picture her laughing and telling stories, and I picture the warmth before the storm. And I remind myself that death didn't steal her. The thief was everything that got to her before death arrived. And that's not even to talk about her childhood trauma, the abuse that she suffered, the things that happened to her before any of the rest of this even manifested. But in the end, I do believe death was gentle. I believe it took her hand and said, you fought long enough. Let's go home. When my dad found her, she was laying on the couch, self-inflicted gunshot wound. She had her headphones on and she was listening to Elvis. House was clean. She had picked everything up. She had orchestrated the ending of her life in the way that would least impact us to clean up. You fought long enough. Let's go home. And the look frozen on her face was a smile. And if this does nothing, that's what I want for everyone to understand, is for death to be the closing of a story, not the erasure of a life. If this conversation is hitting close to home, or you've got someone who wants to work with grief, trauma, or life transitions from a place of compassion and strategy, my door is always open. You can find my info on the Transformation Talk Network's website, withoutfeardoula.com. Because it's not about fixing people, right? It's about walking them through the hard things and teaching you how to do the same. If you're listening to this and you're struggling with addiction, mental illness, grief, or the aftermath of someone else's death, please hear me right now. You are not broken. You are not alone. And you are not beyond saving. There are hotlines, there are therapists, there are peer support groups, there are coaches, there are people who will believe in you, hold space in you, and help you claw your way out. The thief wants you to believe alone. Alone. You are alone. And you're not. And you can't let it win. You can't let it convince you that you're alone. Because if you believe in you as much as I believe in you, you're not. So when you think about the people that you've lost to addiction, to mental illness, to suicide, say their names, tell their stories, not as cautionary tales. I don't want this episode to scare you. I don't want it to freak you out. I don't want you to leave this feeling worse, but as reminders of what needs to change. Death is no thief, but silence is, shame is, neglect is. Those things will suffocate you. The only way we take back what is stolen is by speaking loudly, honestly, relentlessly, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Don't stop. All you need is a reason to get up tomorrow, and then a reason to get up the day after that, and the day after that. And it can be as small of a reason as any, because the person that takes your coffee order will wonder where you are. Because the person you see every day on your walk to the office from the parking garage will be like, hey, I haven't seen them in a while. You impact so many other people, even in small ways that you don't even realize. And if that's what it takes to get you through today to tomorrow, stick your claws in it. Grab hold, grab it by the hair, and hold on. Because that day is going to turn into a week, and it's going to turn into a month, and it's going to turn into years. Everything can be darkest night, but just as we know, coming up to solstice here in December, nothing's permanent. The seasons change, light comes and goes. Stay. Stay. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying. And as always, live well, without fear. Say their names. Her name was Tracy. Stay. And listen to this anytime you need to be reminded that somebody cares. Have a great one, guys. That's all for today.
I'm death doula Alexis Hughes, and you've been listening to Without Fear, Life, Death, and Everything in Between. Join me every third Monday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard on Transformation Talk Radio for honest conversations about life's final chapter. Together, we'll break down barriers around mortality and empower you with practical tools to start meaningful conversations with your loved ones about end-of-life wishes. To learn more about end-of-life support and my work as a death doula, visit withoutfeardoula.com. Thanks for listening.